Stephanie Dobson joins us again this week. Stephanie is a lawyer and mediator with Hankin Divorce Law and Mediation here in Lloydminster. And we're back for another segment of Healthy Thriving Family After Divorce. So Stephanie, this week we are going to tackle the subject of children's education when parents are going through the divorce or separation process. So what type of decisions would parents be looking at making when it comes to education if they are going through this process and they're trying to work to get their children their education?
So the first thing that parents will typically do when they separate is to start building a parenting plan. And within that parenting plan, we usually have to look at decision-making responsibilities. We used to call it custody, and now we call it decision-making responsibilities. And so in your parenting plan, usually you'll either put that their sole decision-making responsibility to one parent or joint decision-making responsibility to both parents between them. So one of the things you want to specify is how those education decisions specifically will be made. So I'll just give you some examples because, of course, on the whole, we can say education decisions, but then what does that really mean? So one of the things you want to specify is communication between the school and the family. So specifying how you want that to look. So is there going to be one primary liaison? Are both parents going to give their contact information, their email address and phone number to the school so that the school is really clear at who they'll be contacting if need be? So then let's look at what kind of education decisions will be made jointly and what will be made alone by one parent. So you may want to consider are these decisions that are going to be made actually joint decisions? So you take both people's perspective and then you make a decision. Or is one person going to make the decision and the other person gets consulted or informed of the decision after the fact? So it's really important not only to figure that out at the parental level, but also to let the school know how those decisions are going to be made so that the proper communication channels happen.
Ideally, Stephanie, how can parents going through separation and divorce support their child's education?
So the most important thing that parents can do is to have that open dialogue with the school, with the educators, so that the teachers, the administrators, EAs, or any other supports that your children have. So the more that communication that you do have, the better that the school is able to support the growth, development, and educational pursuits of your children. If the educators know that there's conflict at home, or if your children are having a rough time getting into that new routine for newly separated parents of moving between homes, or they're having difficulty adapting to something, then the educators are there to be able to support your children during their school day.
Do you have any recommendations for the type of communication that separated or divorcing parents should have with their children's educators?
Well, I always recommend that you work together as a team. So the education group, so teachers, administrators, EAs, and other supports, along with the parents, with the common goal of supporting your children educationally. Now, of course, this goes beyond just separating and divorcing parents. It also is for intact families. It's really important to have that open dialogue. But it will depend for each family on your particular circumstance. So that may mean there's a weekly email that gets sent from the school or from the parents as to how the children are doing. So it's not really a one size fits all, but the most important thing you can do is at least open the dialogue. The schools are usually very familiar when there's divorcing families, but they won't know the context of your particular family.
What if there's been one parent that's kind of been the sole communicator with the schools for this entire time, and now all of a sudden the process of separation or divorce is happening? How does that impact that?
Well, it's not uncommon that while you're a one household intact family, that there is one parent who naturally takes the lead on education communication with the schools. But once there's a separation that's occurred, that's not necessarily the way that things will continue. And so quite often the roles will shift. And what sometimes families find is that if one parent's been the liaison, then the person who hasn't naturally been the liaison now wants to become a liaison with the school and now wants to become involved with the decision making and really communicating. And so that can certainly be frustrating to the parent who used to do it all the time, but it's really important to be open to that if both of you are joint decision makers with respect to the children.
All right, Stephanie, well, thank you so much for joining us once again, and we will be back to chat with you again next week.